Okay, now we're starting. Okay, I want to welcome all of us, the Serrans from the United States and friends of Serra and any Serrans from around the world. This is the 49th meeting of our Serra Meets, and our first meeting was December the 12th of 2020, so right in the midst of COVID. I'm your host. I'm Ann Rote. I'm a member of the Serra Club of Lafayette in Indiana, and then also the president of the United States Council. And I'm going to officially call this meeting to order, and I'm going to ask Eleanor Gentilini, who is the regional director from the Rocky Mountain region of the United States and a member of our the board of the U.S. Council, to say our opening prayer. Eleanor?
Okay, this is called a prayer for new beginnings. Dear Lord, as we enter this new year, we seek your guidance for new beginnings. Grant us the strength to let go of past burdens and embrace the opportunities ahead with faith and optimism. May your light lead us on the path of righteousness, and your grace empower us to achieve our goals. Help us to start this year anew with a heart full of hope and a spirit ready to serve you. Bless our efforts and make this year a time of growth and blessings. Amen.
Thank you,
Amen.
Eleanor. As you know, this meeting is going to be recorded, and then you can always access it on our Serra YouTube channel. A link from the meeting to a link to the YouTube channel will be on our Serra website. And I know many of our clubs will use this as part of their regular meeting, or just sometimes if a speaker doesn't show up, they'll be able to use it that way. Or sometimes they use it as a recording, just like a little excerpt in their meeting. Our meeting today will be about 1 hour, and it will take the form of like what a typical Serra Club meeting would be like. So we've got the opening prayer, we're going to have a speaker, we'll have some business, and then a closing prayer. We will have time for questions and answers, and you can always ask a question just by putting it in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. If you can type your question in there, we'll be able to get to that. So use that. Our keynote speaker today is kind of a treat. Some of you know him. I'm going to hope you all know him. It's our executive director, John Liston. John actually lives in Chicago. He's married and has 2 lovely little children. Sometimes we get to see them on some of our meetings, our Zoom meetings. But John went to Archbishop, oh, there he's got a picture of them, of the boys.
Aw.
John went to Archbishop Quigley High School Seminary, which was funny because growing up, I grew up in Chicago, and I remember there were 2 Quigleys at that time. John earned a Bachelor of Science from Darla Moore School of Business at the University of South Carolina. He also received degrees in international business, human resources management, and entrepreneurship. He obtained his Juris Doctorate from Loyola University in Chicago, the School of Law there, with a certificate in advocacy. It sounds like he belongs in Serra. After becoming the executive director before becoming our executive director, he worked for the law firm of Sanchez, Daniels, and Hoffman as a civil defense attorney. In addition to his work for Serra, John is an adjunct professor at Loyola, where he teaches courses in negotiation, mediation, and client counseling. John is also treasurer for the Innovation Experts, a non-for-profit that provides support services for public libraries. John's going to be talking to us today about Serra, just sort of our history, because we're coming up on our 90th anniversary. So this is a perfect opportunity for us to get up to speed and learn about our organization. John, welcome to Serra Meets.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rote. It's nice to be in front of the camera or on camera during one of these rather than just behind the scenes pushing the buttons. And thank you all for coming out. This is our 90th year, and so we're going to be doing a number of great things as we move forward to celebrate the incredibly rich and vibrant history of Serra. We're probably going to put together a book on it. And some have said we might need to call it or fiction, because you probably wouldn't believe all of the things that have happened over the past 9 decades with our apostolate. So I've got a few slides that I prepared. I call it 90 Years of Serra, an oral history with pictures. So we're going to go to where it all began, and that is Seattle, Washington in 1935. This is a picture of the city from back then, and it looks very different from what it does now. Probably the only constant is Mount Rainier. So the original founders met in the home of Leo Sharkey, and this is a picture of his actual house. They got together in 1935, or 1934 was the first meeting. But the founders got together because they were actually 4 Catholic laymen who were not allowed to join Rotary because they were Catholic. And they were Harold Haberly. He was considered to be the spiritual core of Serra, and he was the first president of the Seattle Serra Club. There was also Dan Rooney, who was the second president, and he did a lot of the administrative work to help get the clubs founded. He was responsible for chartering over a dozen Serra clubs, and that is a record that may still stand to this day. Additionally, there was Leo Sharkey, who was one of the youngest of the group, and he was the driving force behind the Serra newsletters, which in the era before email, that was the primary means of communication for all Serra clubs. And finally, there was Richard Ward, who was the original author of the Serra Constitution and bylaws. And as you go over the years, it really is amazing to see how little our governing documents have changed and how well we were set up from the beginning. Someone who's often overlooked in the history of Serra is Jack Bray. He's the one who is credited with picking Father Serra as our patron, which if you go back to 1935, Father Serra was, an important figure in the history of California. He had just gotten his statue in the Capitol Rotunda. Amazing. California was putting up statues of Father Serra back then, rather than what's going on right now. But he was the one who's credited with, using Father Serra as a model for holiness and perseverance. And Father Noel Maholi was one of the other driving forces in that. So Serra started, as it always starts, with the approval of the bishop. And there you see a picture of Bishop Shaughnessy. And he was the one who said that, Serra needs to be formed. We should move slowly, humbly, soundly, and think with the mind of the church. And I feel like we've done a very good job of that as an organization from the beginning, and we continue that to the day. The chaplain really remains the spiritual anchor of Serra, and that's how it's always been. And there you see the picture of the first Serra chaplain that Bishop Shaughnessy appointed.
No, Gallagher.
So people wonder why Serra had the vocations objective, and that came from John Jeanette. John Jeanette's son actually became a priest about 15 years after John was involved in the formation of Serra. And there was a book written, The Miracle of the Priesthood, that was published in 1963 about this. One of the first programs that the Serra Club did involves St. Edward's Seminary in Seattle, Washington. And they brought students there as kind of the first Quo Vadis or come and see weekend. Here's a great piece of Serra history. You see, these are the original accounting. So Serrans would pay 25 cents per meeting. So if you, I use the inflation calculator today, and if you inflate that out from $1935 to $2025, the dues for Serra would be around $300. So we've done a really good job of managing that. Here's one of the few charter photos we have from a club. This was the founding of the Serra Club of Portland in Oregon back in 1937. Some of the original club programs you see here are remarkably similar to what we have today. The Day of Discovery, the Portland Club still does Quo Vadis Days. The parish vocation councils, Dr. Roach, does that sound familiar? Is that
Yes,
what we're
wow.
doing with Spark and Ignite? The Vigil for Vocations. This is actually a program that continues on. I know that Serra in Great Britain has kept this going for the last 25 or 30 years. I don't know of many US clubs that do that, where they have an evening vigil for vocations. And then this one, summer employment for seminarians. We've gone away from the need for that because there have been more programs that keep seminarians occupied. But there was a time when many Serrans would hire seminarians to work for them over the summer, to provide them with resources and to keep them out of trouble.
Mhm.
Here you'll see the original constitution of Serra. And back then we only had two objectives. And one of them was to form enduring friendships among Catholic men. Serra was considered to be the University of Christian Principles at the time. And that's something that continues to this day. Dr. Tom Sheen was the first president of Serra International. By 1938, we had 5 clubs and we needed leadership overall. In 1941, we put out our first publicity manual to try and further establish what Serra was and help us grow on a national and global level. Here you see a quote from John Donahue, who was the 3rd executive director of Serra International. And again, I think it carries through to this day that Serrans are vowed to the task of exemplifying the work of human society and sharing a consciousness explanation of the divine possibilities to vocations to the priesthood. That continues to drive us to this day. Here you'll see something that's very important in the life of our organization. In 1951, Serra was aggregated to the Pontifical Work for Priestly Vocations. And we are the only lay organization that has that distinction and that honor. With it comes some spiritual benefits, including indulgences. I really don't like using that in selling Serra to other people because of the church's difficulties with that way back when. But that is a privilege and an honor that Serrans receive. And we will be sharing more information about that at the convention, which this year will be in Kansas City. And as a fun historical side note, it was at the 1951 convention in Kansas City, which is in the same location, the same property as the Kansas City Marriott, where we're holding this year's convention, that we received the notice of the aggregation.
Oh,
We're going to be doing a lot more to talk about that element of our history and what that's done for helping Serra throughout the years. The Vocational Institute in the 1960s, many clubs started working to promote not just diocesan vocations, but also vocations to religious orders. And this was a program that came out of the Serra Club of Wichita. And we were able to get some of the information on that from the Serra Magazine archives, which we have available online. And that's another piece of our history that will be made available to everyone. These next slides talk about kind of the expansion of Serra globally. And when you look at how Serra grew, it's really remarkable to see. We were founded as Serra International. If let me go back to the governing documents, you'll see that's what we called ourselves even back in 1938. But the reason for that is because if you're in Seattle, Washington, you just presume that you're going to go up to Canada. And that's why we called ourselves Serra International. Our founders, maybe they had grand plans to go globally, but I don't think they really foresaw the depth and the expansion of Serra. Our first club outside the US was in Canada, but much to their surprise, it was in Toronto, not Vancouver or Victoria, just north of Seattle. We then went to Lima, Peru, Mexico, England, and Genoa, Italy. And Cardinal Stritch, who was one of Serra's first Episcopal advisors, he was the main force behind that because he had family in Genoa. And then you'll see in the 1960s, Serra went to a great number of countries, both in South America and throughout Asia and Australia as well. So our organization really grew and flourished and became truly global in the 60s and 70s. The Call by Name program is one of Serra's real treasures, and that's a thing that is used all around the world by Serra clubs everywhere. Another one is the 31 Club, and the gentleman you see there, Paul Mariani, actually started that club in New Zealand. That's where the 31 Club came from, and then it kind of percolated up to the international level and was disseminated worldwide. The First Steps program, this is really the basis for the Quo Vadis weekends, and also, I don't know if you have Totus Tuus programs, but that's borrowed heavily.
Yeah.
An interesting historical note for Serra is one of our international presidents actually went on to become a priest. Tom Murphy from Indianapolis served as president of Serra International. He was a bachelor, and then after his presidency, he went on to seminary and became a priest. This is a very appropriate year to talk about female leadership in Serra, because it just so happens that at this moment, the presidents of Serra International, Dr. Moira McQueen, the U.S. Counsel, Dr. Ann Rote, and the Serra International Foundation, Cindy Bell, who she'll get a doctorate at some point. She's working on it. Are leading the main pieces of our organization. But here you'll see that Mary Lynn was the first female trustee of Serra International all the way back in 1961. That was just 5 years after we allowed women to become members. Claire Howard was the first female president of the U.S. Council. Dr. Rote is our third. And Sue Chehersky was the first female president of Serra International. Dr. McQueen is our second. I cannot imagine where Serra would be if we did not have the phenomenal female leadership that we've had over the years. So we've had some amazing speakers over the years at conventions, including Archbishop Fulton Sheen, Cardinal Tagle, and many other just amazing Catholics who have brought in great things to the church. So these are just a few examples of, who's come to speak at our conventions. And usually, let me back up to that for 1 second. Usually Serra has a great job of finding people before they explode onto the international stage. We're very good at identifying talent. Cardinal Tagle spoke to the 2004 convention in Bangkok when he was the Bishop of Imus in the Philippines. He's now running, he's a pro-prefect for a dicastery in the Vatican now, and he's on several short lists for the potential next Holy Father. So
Wow.
we've been thrilled to have such great people. Over the years, the leadership structure of Serra has changed a little bit. It used to be we would just have a number of vice presidents. And so every year, the first vice president would become the president-elect, and then the president, and so on. But we've gone away from that to a more portfolio-based vice presidency with vice presidents for membership programs, vocations, communications, and in some places, cultural outreach. So I thought this quote was very apropos since we are in another Jubilee year. This is a photo from the year 2000 when there was a Serran pilgrimage to Rome for the Jubilee. And there you see the words of John Paul II to the Serrans who were there, encouraging us to be a people of communion, supporting priests with active affection, with characteristic charity, showing the needs of the church for vocations, especially among the poor. And we've been privileged to meet with not just St. John Paul II, but as recently as 2017, we were able to have a private audience with the Holy Father during our convention in Rome. So there's so many wonderful nuggets and unique historical facets of Serra. I wanted to give just a quick overview and then open it up to any questions you may have, and also to encourage you to share with us the history of your club, because we're working on a number of things for our 90th anniversary. And one of them is kind of a compendium of the history of Serra that we hope to have available at the convention in Kansas City. So we've set up a dedicated email address for this, and we'll be sending out more information following the Serra rally in Miami about how you can share your favorite memories of Serra, any photos you have. I'm sure many people on this meeting have a thing where here's a unique experience I had because I was part of Serra. It's really so amazing to see all of the doors that open up and the way that priests and religious kind of relax when you tell them, I'm a Serra. If they know Serra, then they feel that they're in a place with people that trust and support them. And you normally get, I'd say, a less filtered version of their opinions of certain things, which it is a great honor for us to be able to know and for us to participate in the church in that way. So I covered a lot of ground in a short amount of time. Does anyone have any questions at the moment?
There's a question. Let's see. It's interesting to see how Serra International has grown globally in the span of a couple of decades historically. But today, what else do you foresee Serra International going in terms of countries or region? Oh, good. John, where do you see us going?
Wonderful question, Andrea. Thank you. So we have leads on Serra clubs, and really, Serra has always grown because of its members. People will, have a relation or a friend or someone in another place and say, I'm a part of this group. I think you would really enjoy it. I think this would be good for you. So that Serra has grown organically. We haven't really targeted places to grow. However, there are several hotbed areas right now, one of them being Nigeria. We continue to charter new clubs in Nigeria. It's been one pretty much every other year.
Wow.
And of interest, we have strong contacts in the United Arab Emirates that are it's not the bishop, I forget the term now, but the local ordinary over there has expressed interest in forming a Serra club in the Emirates. And we
Wow.
also have leads on Serra clubs in Japan. So those are two countries where we're looking to grow right now. We have had some interest also from Germany. So we're going to go back into Germany. We had a club in Heidelberg back in 1951. But I believe that was on a US either Air Force or a military base of some kind. It wasn't a truly German Serra club. So, so we're always looking for new places. And if you have leads for us, please contact us. We'd be happy to work with them and send out the information. And that's both foreign and domestic. We still, by last count, I think we have Serra clubs in, was it 130 some odd dioceses in the US? And there are dioceses that do not have Serra clubs. So we still have work to do here.
Yeah, and we know who they are.
Yeah. And speaking of a club in every diocese, up until 2 years ago, Thailand had 2 Serra clubs in every diocese. And that's a country that is half of 1% Catholic. And the only reason they don't have a club in every diocese now is Chiang Mai, which is where we had the international convention 2 years ago, split into 2 dioceses. And there's not a club in Chiang Rai, which is the newly formed diocese, but they're working on that.
But if you know of places in the United States, and we know who doesn't have a Serra club, we'd love to have one there. Or just if you need another one in the diocese, that's great too. I know Candace will be thrilled to talk to you about it. Okay, well, thank you, John. Boy, that was just great. I really loved the PowerPoint too.